win. Welcome to the webinar to win. My name is Scott Baird. I'm the founder of Griffin Hill and the author of the Griffin Hill Integrity Sales System. We're grateful to have you join us in our webinar to win today. I'm thrilled to have with us Dr. Jack R. Christianson. For those of you that were on, we always gather with our co-presenters 15 minutes or so before, and some of you were on that early, and we were bantering with them. For those of you that were on that early, you know that from the time I was very young, even in elementary school, I knew Dr. Jack R. Christianson. We didn't call him doctor then, we just called him Jack. But he was a remarkable leader even then. He stood head and shoulders in his leadership capacity, his ability to influence others in meaningful ways, and his ability to stand for things good and influential, even when I was that young. I have followed him throughout my youth. He was a remarkable and gifted athlete, but again, more importantly than his athletic prowess, those physical gifts that God gave him, is his ability to lead. There's just this innate capacity within him to lead. And though I haven't known Ron Tracy except for our introduction as a result of this webinar to win, anybody that Jack chooses to partner with tells us a great deal. So you're going to love their presentation. Our commitment to you from Griffin Hill is to bring you quality material content that will elevate your ability to be leaders, to influence others for good, to marshal an army that can go forward and help you to accomplish your strategic designs and ends. One of the ways that we do that, and have always done that, is through presenting or bringing to you other important leaders and their skills and talents. We do that also at SMARTcon, where we gather talent from all over. SMARTcon is Utah's sales, marketing, and technology conference. You're going to want to save the date. Get this on your calendar, September 28th. In the Utah Valley Convention Center. This is our third annual Sales, Marketing, and Technology Conference. Last year, our keynote speaker was Stephen M.R. Covey. He talked about the speed of trust. I spoke again with Stephen just yesterday as he talked about the influence that the speed of trust is having around the world as he stands before heads of state and captains of industry throughout the world. And we had the great opportunity to have him as our keynote speaker at SMARTcon last year. And Stephen wishes us well in our upcoming year and wanted me to convey to all of you the importance of this gathering at SMARTcon. So get it on your calendar, September 28th. You can actually go get registered for it today. You can register for it today, and you don't even have to pay until July sometime, and you'll get the lowest possible rate. So you can preserve the lowest possible rate by registering today, and you don't even have to pay for it until later. So we acknowledge SMARTcon as one of the great opportunities to do things exactly like what we're doing today, hearing from remarkable leaders with terrific content, men like Dr. Jack R. Christianson and Ron M. Tracy. So go get registered for SMARTcon, save the date, get it on your calendar. You're definitely going to want to be there, Utah Valley Convention Center. So you can just go to smartcon.griffinhill.com and get registered for that today. Now, having said all of that, Dr. Christianson and Mr. Tracy have collaborated to do a wonderful work. They've got a new book out. They're going to be able to talk to you about that book and the leadership principles contained within it. It has a great deal to do with the way we lead, the way we utilize listening as a leadership tool and technique. And for that reason, we're focusing on that discussion today, even as we think about our Griffin Hill piece. So one of the things that you can always do, of course, based on this slide, contact me at any time at Griffin Hill. You can see contact information there. We're anxious to include you in the conversation and in the discussion about leadership, about influence, about persuasion, about the way we can make a difference in the world. And one of the things that you'll observe is that the world is changing and not for the good. And so as you listen to Dr. Christianson and Mr. Tracy, and as you think about these principles from the Griffin Hill Integrity Sales System about listening, it is that fundamental principle that will begin to change the world. If we begin to listen to one another, then we can have greater influence with one another in positive ways. So if you want to join the conversation today, if you've got comments or questions, you can see how to in fact, I'm going to have somebody post, maybe Ethan or Brett, post something in the notes section. You can see that on the side there. But if you've got comments or questions, feel free to ask them as we go through our discussion today, focusing on this important leadership principle of listening. And it's also a principle of persuasion. Sometimes salespeople think that the key element of persuasion is speaking. You get on with a telemarketer and they never want to let you get a word in edgewise because they're afraid that you will reject them. And so they think that as long as they keep talking, that they will get something positive done, that they will be persuasive. But the truth is, it is when you listen that you are most persuasive, and hence the power of the needs audit in the Griffin Hill Integrity Sales System as we talk about it today. Look, the Griffin Hill Integrity Sales System starts here with case open. It moves to needs audit, solution presentation, adapted solution, closing interaction, fulfillment, and follow-up. This is what the research tells us the most efficient way to parse the problem of how do you get a sale. To break it down into its component parts, those component parts being an introduction, a listening engagement, an opportunity to present solutions. Sometimes it needs to be adjusted or adapted, and that's what these two pieces are about. But these are really accordion pieces in the overall sales process. And then, of course, fulfillment and follow-up. But because of our focus today, we wanted to help people to think about ratios of talking versus listening. That case open routine, that's 60 words. It's the first 60 words that you speak. And even though those first 60 words are just that, very tight, very short, there's still an opportunity for engagement and to listen to those that we're engaging. So the first 60 words, because of the nature of its introduction, it brings in, it's mostly the presenter talk time, but even then there's listening. Needs audit, get this. In the needs audit routine, it's 20 to 30% listening. This is about the listening active, or 20 to 30% speaking. It's 70 to 80% listening. It's when we listen to other people that we learn about them. We understand their needs and wants. We understand what's going on in their world. We understand, and they begin to discover the power of what you're actually presenting. Now, look, we think about solution presentation as only the salesperson talking, but even then, it's 30 to 40% listening, even during the time we're presenting solutions, all the way through fulfillment and follow-up, where again, it goes to 60 to 70% listening. That's the power of selling. Look, if we introduce we talked about those 6 steps of the process: case open, needs audit, solution presentation, adapted solution, closing interaction, fulfillment, and follow-up. But this isn't simply a checklist. You know, okay, check, I got through case open routine. Okay, check, I got through needs audit. Okay, check, I got through each of the plays of the needs audit. It's not a checklist. This is about engagement. It's about connectivity. It's about making sure that we're interacting together. For that reason, even though a webinar isn't as interactive as we'd like it to be, we want your questions. We want your observations. And at any time, as those questions and observations come in, we'll invite our moderators to also jump in and just share them or articulate them as we go. This is about, in the needs audit, in the integrity sales system, it's about learning how to ask the right questions so that you create meaningful and beneficial business relationships. That's what you're going to hear abundantly from Dr. Christianson and Mr. Tracy today. How listening can help actually create meaningful relationships as we learn to be good leaders. Well, look, in the needs audit, the purpose of the needs audit, as we think about the sales process, certainly is to get information that we need to build a compelling proposal. That goes without saying. But look at this number 2, building relationships with prospects that also reinforce our position. It helps decision makers reach conclusions. And you think that happens when the presenter speaks. It doesn't. Helping decision makers reach conclusions happens when you're listening and they are speaking. Making sure that the needs audit is a place to break down emotional barriers and defenses happens because you're listening, not because you're speaking. Well, those are the key purposes, but the principle, number 1 principle in the needs audit is listening. And those active listening techniques that include asking good questions. And good questions in the needs audit include abundant open-ended questions, because it is open-ended questions that stimulate an opportunity for our suspect, our prospect, our business partner to speak, to convey, to share. And when they share, as you look at that principle number 3, it's when they share that it begins to build trust. Look, for them to be able to share ideas and thoughts about their needs, their wants, their goals, their priorities, it means they have to package them in little packets of trust and then convey them to you. And that's what makes this purposeful FaceTime. Look, it's not about us selling to them. It's about us listening and learning and building relationship and building trust with them. That's what the needs audit is all about. That's why it's only 20 to 30% talk time and 80% listening time. Well, look, the basic plays of the needs audit routine are these. We're going to reframe what we've done before. We're going to utilize opportunity queries. These opportunity queries help us and the prospect to identify priorities, to clarify what it is we're trying to accomplish. What are those key objectives? And then to what degree are we meeting them now? Problem queries, where are we, where do we have issues, where are we not stacking up? And then the effects and consequence queries. And then the schedule the next event. Look, part of our intent today is not to make you skilled in the needs audit process, but to just introduce it as an important place that facilitates salesperson learning, salesperson listening, leader learning, and leader listening. That's what the needs audit does. Look, if you want to know more about the needs audit, we'll be happy to schedule for you and your team a free consultation about needs audit so that it will elevate your skills in leadership and learning, so that it will increase your efficacy. Look, we just shared this example not long ago. One of our clients, iHeartMedia. When we, in our first year of engagement with them, they outpaced competitors by 325% in profitability. Why? Largely because of the needs audit routine. As they learned these principles of listening to customers, of listening to prospects, of being able to use it as a leadership tool, they were able to outpace competitors by 325% in profitability. That's the efficacy of what we're talking about today in this leadership principle of listening and how it applies to growing your enterprise, to growing your business. This isn't just for salespeople. It's about business owners. It's about leaders at every level of a business doing this same thing, applying needs audit to those that they lead and those that they love, those that they care about, whose capacity they're trying to tap into and grow. And for that reason, for all of you who want to opt in, we'll do a special coaching session to elevate your skill, at no charge to you, to elevate your skill in the principles of the needs audit routine for business owners, for leaders, for salespeople. Look, if you want that, just email support@griffinhill.com and say, I want the free training on needs audit. And we'll make sure that we get that to you as you learn how to apply these 6 basic plays that will elevate your leadership, it will elevate your listening capacity, and it will elevate your efficacy in the same way that it did for iHeartMedia, where we increased their, well, obviously the increase in their sales was dramatic, but to outpace competitors by 325%, just absolutely remarkable. Now, this is my opportunity to turn things over to my great co-presenters today, Dr. Jack Christianson, a man I've admired for a long, long time, and his co-author. Ron Tracy is a business coach. He's done training and leadership and coaching in leadership for more than 20 years. He's experienced. He knows what he's talking about. And so you now have 2 profound leaders sharing with you their insights about leadership and listening and the impact that it will have on your organization. I'm pleased to turn the time to them. I think, Dr. Christianson, Mr. Tracy, I retain control of the slide deck. Sorry about that. You just tell me advance in whatever subtle way you want, like, move the slide, Scott, and I'll do that.
Well, thank you, Scott, so much. Ron and I could not be happier to be with you this morning. We hope all of you listeners will benefit from what we have to say. All of my life, I have looked for leaders that would actually lead me and inspire me and encourage me to become the best that I could be. When I was a young man, early in my career, and when I was trying to be a writer, when everybody told me that I couldn't write, that I couldn't speak, that I had all these things against me, I had an opportunity of meeting the great author Og Mandino. And some of you, excuse me, will remember Mr. Mandino. He was a prolific self-help author back in the 80s and the 90s and 70s as well. He died in 1996. But in 1984, when I was a young teacher and in graduate school and raising a family and trying to be a writer and an author and a speaker, he came to the University Mall in Orem, Utah. And I happened to have been just released from the hospital. I'd been very ill. And so I went there on a Saturday night to meet him. And I had read everything he had written up to that time, many of those things multiple times. And so when I finally got to the front of the line and I had a whole armful of his books for him to sign, he said, well, boy, you must really be a real fan. I said, sir, you have no idea how you've influenced me. And hopefully someday I can be an influence like you have been in the lives of many, many people. And his first question was, well, what have you written? And at the time, I'd recorded one CD. Then it was a cassette tape, if you remember. And some of you listening won't remember cassette tapes, but they really did exist. And I had one in my pocket, and I said, I have a copy of it right here. My first book will be printed this summer, and I'll make sure you get a copy. May I give you a signed copy of my first talk tape? And instead of shoving me off or pushing me aside, he took both of my hands and looked me right in the eye, and he said to me, I promise you, I will listen to what you have to say. And I promise you, I will read your book when it comes out. And right then and there, I realized that he lived his messages. He was someone I wanted to emulate in my leadership style. So as the time went on, he just kept holding my hands and talking to me and made me feel as though I was the most significant person in the entire bookstore. And I've tried to emulate that. I've looked for leaders I have a talk that I give on 15 points of engaged leadership. And I've been speaking on those for 30 plus years. Well, then Ron, my co-author, he'd been giving a seminar for over 20 years on leadership. And so we decided rather than both do our own thing, we would combine and write this book called Frogs Matter Most. It's a parable about taking the personal and professional leadership leap. So when you see the slide here, it says, are you listening, on a lily pad? The reason that it's a lily pad is because the main character in the parable is a frog named Bob, and he teaches two businessmen how to be effective leaders. He gives them 3 very important values, 8 leadership behaviors, and 4 leadership roles that have to be engaged in order to make you an effective leader, not just in your business, but in your personal life. Think of how many families or other relationships could be enhanced and blessed and lifted if we just learn to listen. So one of the great skills of listening, one of the great skills of leadership is empathic listening. And we're going to describe the difference between empathic listening and just listening in just a moment. But let me give you my elevator speech that I give to people when they say, can we go back to that other slide for just a second? Before I get there, people say, well, what's your book about? I give them a 1-minute elevator speech, and this is basically it. Relationships are more important than the issues, but all issues still have to be resolved. And what Frogs Matter Most does is teach an individual how to resolve those issues and still maintain a relationship, whether that's in a family, whether that's in a business, whether it's in an athletic team, whether it's in the military. Then when we can understand that one little principle, we can show you how to do that, and then we can peel away all the layers of defensiveness that Scott talked about in his opening remarks and get to the true source of the problem. So as we talk about empathic listening, I want Ron to take over here for just a minute, and we want to give you a little story and help you see how your listening skills are. We've learned over years and years of experience that listening, as Scott said, is really one of the most essential behaviors and that a leader can have, and yet it's probably where most leaders fail the very most. And so I was very interested in those statistics about how much more those that led were more productive. You know, a leader has to lead, and people really do matter most, but so does the bottom line if you're in business. So a true leader can keep relationships and still reach the bottom line. Ron, would you go ahead and talk about our little story here?
Yeah, thanks, Jack.
We can go to the next slide, please.
No, not yet.
Evidently, don't do that. Sorry, Scott.
No, I want you all to have some fun here for a moment. I'm going to read you a story I found on the internet. It's quite funny. And one thing that you might want to do is close your eyes and try to envision what this story is about. But don't go to sleep yet, okay? Wait till Jack gets back on, then you can go to sleep in that time, okay? So this is a article called Poor Planning Causes Accident. It was found in a guest editorial called Jab's Gab in the Benton County Enterprise. That's Jab's Gab in the Benton County Enterprise. And here's the report as this person related it. He says, I was visiting with a friend in his Springfield, Missouri insurance office and asked him if he had anything that I could use in my newspaper column. Without batting an eye, he reached into his desk drawer and he handed me a claim that he had received that very day. And here is what the claim said, word for word. It says, I am writing in response to your company's request for additional information regarding my claim. In block number 3 of the accident report form, I put poor planning as the cause of my accident. Well, you said in your letter that I needed to explain more fully, so the following details should be a better explanation. I am an amateur radio operator. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the top section of my brand new 80-foot antenna tower. When I had completed my work, I discovered that I had, over the course of several trips up the tower, brought up about 300 pounds of tools and spare hardware. Well, rather than carry the tools and material down by hand, I decided to lower the items in a small barrel by using a pulley that was attached to the gin pole at the top of the tower. Tying the rope at ground level, I went to the top of the tower and I loaded the tools and materials into the barrel. Then I went back down to the ground and untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the 300 pounds of tools. You will note in block number 11 of your accident reporting form that I weigh 155 pounds. Well, due to my surprise of being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rather rapid rate up the side of the tower. In the vicinity of the 40-foot level, I met the barrel coming down. This explains my fractured skull and broken collarbone. It gets better. Slowed down only slightly, I continued the speedy ascent, not stopping until the fingers of my left hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. You can just feel that pain, can't you? Fortunately, by this time, I had regained my presence of mind, and I was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of the pain I was in. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of tools hit the ground and the bottom was smashed out of the barrel. Well, devoid of the weight of the tools and the spare hardware, the barrel now weighed 20 pounds. I refer you again to my weight in block number 11. As you might imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the tower. At the vicinity of the 40-foot level again, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the fractured ankle and the lacerations of my legs and lower body. The encounter with the barrel slowed me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell onto the pile of tools. Fortunately, only 3 vertebrae were cracked. Now, this has got to be the best part of the story, okay? I am sorry to report, however, that as I lay there on the tools, in pain, unable to stand, and watching the empty barrel 80 feet above my head, I again lost my presence of mind. I let go of the rope. Okay. Obviously, if there was ever a case for poor preparation or poor planning, this guy was the model for that. Don't know if it was true or not. However, what I want to do is run through a little bit of a test to find out how good of a listener you really are. Now, you're not going to share the results with anyone, but let's take a look through the test. If you'll do the next slide, please. I'm going to ask you a question. What was the name of the column? Write it down somewhere. Okay, I'll give you about 20 seconds to find something and write it down. Or even if you're thinking about it, and if you have the answer in your head, that's fine, but I want you to keep score. So let's do the next slide. Here's the answer. The name of the column was Jab's Gab. Now, most of you probably didn't get that. So let's go on to the next one. Question number 2, next slide. Where was his friend's insurance office? Name the city and state. Okay, now if I give you the right answer, that's a plus for you. If not, that's a minus. Next slide, the right answer is Springfield, Missouri. Okay, next slide, next question. number 3. That is, which block number did he put poor planning as the cause of his accident? Write your number down or get it in your head. And the answer is, next slide, block number 3. Hey, you've got the hang of this, Dr. Baird. Okay. Question number 4. But yeah, he's still going. How tall was the antenna tower? All right, write it down, get it in your mind. Here's the answer. 80 feet. Okay, that one was easy. Okay, now go to question number 5. Next slide. Question number 5 was, how much did the barrel weigh with all the tools and the hardware in it? Now, think for a moment and get the answer. Okay, now this one's a little tougher. Most of you think the answer is 300 pounds, but let's see what the answer is, Dr. Baird. 320 pounds because it combines the weight of the barrel and the tools and the hardware. Okay, question number 6. What was the name of the pole upon which the pulley was attached? Okay, and if you didn't get this one, you're not going to get it if it's not right in your mind. The answer is a gin pole. Question number 7. What was the block number in which his weight was listed? Think of a number, write it down, put it in your head. The answer is block number 11. Then we go to question number 8, which is probably a new slide, I think. Yep. How much did the man weigh? Now, this is what's interesting to me. We're going to have a variety of answers. How much did the man weigh, Dr. Baird?
I'm going with 150.
All right, you proved my point. Next slide. 155 pounds. Okay, question number 9. What did the empty barrel weigh? Obviously, that's pretty simple. The answer is 20 pounds. Most people get that one. Question number 10 is, which hand was caught in the pulley? You got a 50-50 chance here. Right or left hand? Which one is it? The answer is right hand. No, actually the answer is left hand.
What's right hand?
Huh? No, if I put it until the fingers of my left hand. So I got the answer wrong. Obviously, I'm a good listener, but I'm a terrible slide maker. So, all right, now.
That's worth 5 pounds. Ron, I'm just going with, that's worth 5 pounds.
You got that right. Oh boy, okay. I've had that fixed before. So anyway, bonus question. Now this one's a real tough one. What was the name of the paper in which the column was found? If you can't get that one right away, you're not going to. The answer is Benton County Enterprise. Okay, now the question I have for you is, did you think that this was a fair exercise? And a lot of you might say, well, no. I mean, we were listening to the story. It was funny. We loved the guy going up and down and getting hurt both times and everything else. We had no clue you were going to test us on the actual numbers and facts of the story that you told us. But in reality, as you think about what kind of a listener you are you a listener who just picks up on what you think is important in terms of the message that someone's giving you, or are you a listener who's trying to pick up on every bit of the message that that person is trying to convey? Which means that not only are you listening to the facts, but you're also listening to how that person is presenting that information and what information is important to them that they want you to understand. And sometimes in fact, most of the times we don't have the luxury of choosing or picking and choosing what we feel is important from that message. What we should do with empathic listening is understand that message that they are trying to give us entirely. And Jack's going to talk about how we do that, what that really means in terms of all the emotions and all the other things that are going on in that person's mind. But how do we do that exactly? Now, the next slide is a really good example. And I want you to pay attention to what this guy is saying to him. I can't decide to apply for a grant or just rob Big Al's for the money. And look at the guy sitting next to him. He's making eye contact. He's smiling. He's looking his way. But what is he thinking? I wonder if Cindy got my text. I should call her. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is give you a quick question that we want you to just respond to, and that is, you can go ahead and put that up there with that question, who's ever controlling that. Which one do you relate to the most? And then I'm going to turn the time back over to Jack.
Okay, and Emily, is someone going to do something with this question? Or are we just going to have them apply or answer it?
I think we're going to have them answer it, Dr. Christianson, and we'll just give you the results as they go through.
Okay,
so,
great.
Go ahead and click on answer away. Okay, I'm seeing poll results come up. Isn't this interesting? 46% relate with the guy deciding whether or not to apply for the loan, or Rob Big Al's. Oh, wait a minute, we're bouncing. We're right. Oh, wait a minute, we're bouncing. That's 47%. 53% relate with the guy who's got the thought bubble. Oh, that's interesting.
So with that, stop and think about how serious the comment is by the guy with the hood asking should he apply for the grant or to go to Big Al's. That's a pretty serious offense. It's a felony. And the other guy is looking at him, as we talked about, oh, I wonder if I got Cindy got my text. Now think about that, what we do so often. Sometimes we ask the very question that was just answered in what the person was saying because we haven't been listening well enough. Or we even shake our heads in agreement, and then they ask a question about what they had been talking about, and we say, oh, excuse me, could you rephrase that question? I wasn't really paying attention. That happens constantly in my profession as a teacher. What we call it in education is we're unofficially present. Our bodies are there, we're making eye contact, we're appearing to be engaged, when in reality we're off somewhere in our mind. So in order to really become an empathic listener, we have to listen and try to get the full message. So let's go on to the next slide, please. And then we'll go, okay, so why do we want to be listening with empathy? Number one, and I think it goes right along with what Dr. Baird talked about in the introduction, it builds a foundation of trust. When the person really believes that you as his leader or her leader really are listening and truly care, then the foundation of trust can be established. Then the most important thing, could you bring the next slide up, please? It establishes open, honest, and complete communication. How often in a business setting are we afraid to say how we really feel, how we truly feel, because we're afraid we'll be blackballed, no one will want us, they'll think we're trying to be a ladder climber, or whatever the issue. We don't want to say how we truly feel, but when we can establish a relationship of trust based on the fact you know you're going to be listened to and that your feelings matter. One of the things I try and talk about when I give seminars is that we listen to every person at every level of the organization. Some of the people doing the work, for example, in my profession at the university, on the front lines have better ideas than the leaders because they're in the fray every single day. But they're afraid to express how they feel or what they think for fear they'll be shut down or thought of negatively. So let's go on and talk about what we can do to become a better empathic listener. Let's go change the slide, please. All right, the first one is remove all distractions. And by removing all distractions, that is very, very difficult to do. So what we want to do, if you next slide, please, we want to clear our schedule. And clearing your schedule doesn't just mean you allow the appropriate amount of time for the interchange. That's one thing. But if you give me the next slide, you remember when we were young, this is how we tried to communicate with a can and a string. Well, the distractions are just, for example, just sitting in a chair. If you've got a big window and people are walking by, you can be distracted. So adjust your chair so that you're not able to see things going on outside the office, or if you're on a park bench or wherever you are, you have to sit in such a position that you can eliminate some of those distractions. And the most important thing to get rid of are the interruptions. Can I have the next slide, please? Distractions are different than interruptions. If you notice the slide there, it's a man with his cell phone. I would say one of the most significant things we could do to start listening is put away your phone, your iPad, your computer, so you aren't checking emails, text messages, or waiting for your coworkers to call and that kind of thing. So you've got distractions, you've got interruptions that have to be cleared from your schedule. And any comments on that, Ron, that you'd like to make?
No, I think you're doing good.
Scott, anything that you have experienced in just those right there that might be beneficial?
Man, Dr. Christianson, you are just so spot on here, and it's one of the things that is infectious in our society, that we allow that interruption become the permanent distraction of our lives, that technology that dictates everything. It's one of the reasons I never take a phone into a meeting. I leave it someplace else. And that's very, boy, that's just good social conduct. Next book coming up, right, Dr. Christianson?
Right. I mean, it's almost frustrating to go give a presentation somewhere when people are always checking their emails or doing text messages. They're not listening whatsoever.
The one thing I would add is, take a look at the message it's sending to the person you're supposed to be listening to. If you're distracted, then that you're telling them very clearly, all these other things are just a little bit more important to me than you are.
Very good. Let's go to the next slide, please. We want to focus on the individual. Well, one of the most basic communication skills is, if we can have the next slide, is to look people right in the eye. Now, that's very uncommon. In some cultures, perhaps where you've been, Dr. Baird, they don't like to look you in the eye. But in our culture, is that correct? Over in Asia?
Yes.
And so, but in our society right here, you want to look people in the eye, but you don't want to be creepy either. You don't want to just stare at them, but just use some common sense when you look people in the eye, and you can look away from time to time. The next slide, I think, is very important. When you look people in the eye, pay attention and get the message. What are they trying to say, not what are you trying to hear? You remember Stephen Covey sold millions of books, and one of his 7 habits was seek to understand before you seek to be understood. But how do you do that if you don't know the real message that they are expressing? So you're looking for the true message behind the message. We used to call it, when I was in grad school, the meta message. And then next slide, please. And this is so important. Look for nonverbal clues. Are they starting to feel uncomfortable with what you are talking about or what you are addressing? Are they getting red splotches on their neck or their forehead? Are their veins starting to bulge? I mean, we could go on and on. There are all sorts of nonverbal cues of how they are receiving your message, and it's so important to focus on them, and that would help a ton. In fact, let's go to the next slide, please. We want to put aside our own personal agenda. We're there to focus on them, not what we're going to try and get out of the conversation. Next slide, please. And one more. Don't think about what you're going to say next. The biggest problem I have found as I've tried to teach listening skills is people are always trying to reload to say what they want to say next rather than focusing on what the person says, then having some sort of thought process before you answer what they say. Next slide, please. And then don't finish people's sentences. And don't always try to one-up them. I think that's one of the greatest distractors of a meaningful communication is, oh yeah, I've had the same experience, and then we go on and we've forgotten what they've said because we're now talking about us and the experience we've had. And don't, as they're talking to us, I know that, and then you finish their sentence. Very, very discourteous, and it doesn't make for very good relationships. Please, next slide. Ask for their thoughts and their feelings. Again, this is not as common as it should be. Again, people are afraid to give their feelings if they don't feel trust and they don't feel safe. Anything you'd like to say on that, Ron?
again, what you're really trying to do is understand how the issue is affecting that individual, or how passionate they are, or how scared they are. You know, you're really trying to figure out their emotional state so that you can find out exactly what you need to know in order to resolve that issue, while still keeping that trust that you're trying to develop with that individual.
Good. Dr. Baird, anything on your part that you'd like to emphasize?
Yes, you're brilliant. Nicely done.
Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. This is one that I think, and I know Ron feels the same way, is so significant, particularly in a sales organization. Hey, if you've overstated the sales proposal and someone comes back and says, wait a minute, I'm not getting what you said I was going to get, you take responsibility. Oh, forgive me, I apologize, I had the wrong numbers here. This is what is take responsibility for your own personal mistakes. In an organization such as a factory, for example, if someone has asked for overtime and you haven't given it to them because you didn't think they were serious, and then they come to you and say, hey, I thought you said I could get overtime. I've got a daughter in college and I need all the overtime I can get. You can now say, oh, I am so sorry. I wasn't listening to your real message. I didn't know you were serious about that. That's my mistake, and it won't happen again. Those are some of the things that I think will help us be much better listeners. Now, if we could go to the next slide. We want to do a little personal introspection, and then we'll have another poll. So what can you do to be an accomplished empathic listener? What changes have to take place to be a better listener? And again, we've only given you a few things, and we have a whole book, the Frogs Matter Most book, that will help you with these things. But start thinking about what you can do to be a more accomplished empathic listener. And then the real question, how can empathic listening improve your personal and your professional lives? I think that becomes the question of it all. How will this help me to not only care more about people? Again, Frogs Matter Most really is about people matter most, but you still have to meet the bottom line. So how can I be a better listener in my personal and in my professional life? And then the next slide, I want you just to ponder that. Again, our main character in the book is a frog named Bob, sitting there. And sometimes this little slide could be taken negatively if he's trying to be defensive with his arms being crossed. But if you look at the way his legs are, the rock he's sitting on, he's just relaxed, saying, hey, I really want to listen to what you have to say. Now I know it's time for a poll now at this slide. And Ron, anything else before we move on?
No, I'm hoping that you'll have some questions and things that we can answer about how to actually implement this and how you get started doing it the right way. We'd be more than happy to help you with that.
Okay, we're ready for the poll.
All right, dive in. Take the poll. We'll see what happens here. See what the results of this one are. Okay, we seem to be gravitating to that number 3. 50% of all respondents, 55%, put aside personal agenda. Just huge.
Oh, boy.
I love 50% of respondents go with that one.
That's very insightful, isn't it?
That really is. Okay, down to 40%, but that's pretty profound. Yeah, I love that.
And can we
Thank
just
you
have
for responding to the poll.
One more slide, please. We want to thank you for listening and hope that it's been beneficial, and we're open to any questions, and we feel honored to be on the same webinar with you, Scott. Thank you so much.
Well, just absolutely profound. We know that we're right up against the time that we promised you. I'm going to advance. Yeah, thank you for attending. Here it is. Look, we made an offer to you. Get a free coaching session on Needs Audit for your team. You can do that by responding just in the comment box or support@griffinhill.com. I want the coaching session on Needs Audit that will elevate your skill as a listener, as a leader, as a salesperson, would be happy to get that to you for free. Get SMARTcon on your calendar. Make sure that you're registered. You can go register today, won't cost you a thing, and you preserve the lowest pricing. So get to SMARTcon. You're going to see, look, it's just the next big thing. You can't afford to be a sales, a marketing, or the person who runs the technology that drives sales and marketing. You can't afford to be in that role and miss what's going on in the marketplace, miss the big thought that's taking place, miss the trend. So SMARTcon is the place for you to be. Utah's Sales, Marketing, and Technology Conference, late September. Get registered today. Now, we just cannot emphasize enough our thanks to Dr. Christianson and Mr. Tracy. Frogs Matter Most. Check it out. There are ways for you to get that. We encourage you to pay attention to the value and the instruction that you've received today and advance it further. These are men of talent and experience, and we recommend them to you. And Dr. Christianson, Mr. Tracy, my sincere thanks and gratitude to you for participating with us today. We're very, very grateful. Hey, everybody, we're right up against that 50-minute mark, and we try to keep you within that. Thanks for joining the Webinar to Win. We're committed to bringing to you tools, information, instruction that will make you better leaders, that will help you to accomplish your priorities and your objectives. And I just think Dr. Christianson and Mr. Tracy hit it out of the park to that end today. Thank you very much. Grateful to have you with us. We'll see you again at our next Webinar to Win. Next month, we have the Quizzer folks with us. They are just terrific. You're going to enjoy it, Connor Child. July 19, you can make sure that you can get registered for that webinar at griffinhill.com, Webinar to Win. We love having you with us. Make sure you go get registered for the next Webinar to Win. But most importantly, check out the book, Frogs Matter Most, and get registered for SMARTcon. You can do it today, preserve the lowest pricing, and you don't even have to pay for it today. Great to be with you. Thank you very much. Hey, Dr. Christianson, if you'll hold on for just a minute while everybody else drops off, I just want to thank you personally, you and Mr. Tracy. Thank you all for attending. We'll see you next time.